Hi, Julie. Welcome to the video podcast of Product Manager Thought Collectives. And I'm really happy to have you here. We met a few weeks ago in the Everything Marketplace meetup in San Francisco, and then I feel like we bonded really well. So you have very interesting life stories, I would love to start to ask you the questions. How would you introduce yourself as if you were catching up with an old friend that we haven't talked for years? What are some updates you have in life?
Great. Well, first of all, thanks for having me. As you mentioned, we met a few weeks ago, and it was like we hit it off and we're old friends right from the beginning. So I love meeting other female founders, entrepreneurs, business women who are also juggling it all and sharing life stories. So this is perfect. Thank you for the opportunity. I'd first describe myself as a mother because that is my primary role right now. I have three young girls, 10, 8, and 5. And I try and center myself around that as a starting point. And then, secondly, as you alluded to, I am an entrepreneur. So I started a couple companies actually 7 years ago. And now I'm laser focused on one of them. I exited the first one about halfway through so that I could focus on Chamfr. And outside of parenting and entrepreneurship, I don't have a lot of other titles right now because those are two full-time jobs in and of themselves.
Definitely. So you're the founder and CEO of Chamber. What does Chamber do? If you can give us a quick 30 seconds or 60 seconds elevator pitch.
Sure. Yeah, it's a vertical B2B SaaS marketplace, and we're focused on digitizing sourcing in the early stages of product development for medical device engineers. So collecting buyers with suppliers in the early stages of sourcing in med device. And this is new. It's digital didn't exist in med device historically. Even though other B2B industries have been digitally transforming for years, this is very new for med device.
Oh, that's interesting. So you have been a marketing and sales executive for a very long time. But then what triggered the decision to say, hey, I've been working my way up in the corporate ladder, and then I want to do my own thing. I want to found my own company. I want to find a new area, new domain. So what triggered that decision? Did it happen overnight, or maybe is that something you always want to do?
Well, I did always have I always had an interest in entrepreneurship. I mean, I sort of almost started a restaurant. We had the menu, we had the funding, and then there's a whole story why that didn't work out. I looked into franchises. My dad was, somewhat of an entrepreneur. My grandpa had his own business. So the idea was intriguing to me. But, as you astutely pointed out, as you climb the corporate ladder, you sort of have the handcuffs of, okay, I've got a good salary now. I've worked my way up. I have a seat at the executive table. And honestly, when you get to that level, business in and of itself is fascinating. I was working for, just to move towards how this happened, is I was working for a private equity backed company. And it was my first stint in private equity. And they said, you're heading up sales and marketing. We typically didn't have huge marketing budgets. They said, we will give you exponential to what we typically do, but you have to come up with a creative idea. And I'd been selling and marketing in this space for, 10 plus years. And I'm like, oh, geez, we don't, med device, people see it as highly regulated. And so it's slow to evolve and slow to change. This particular part of the process was a pain point for both the supply side, meaning me as a salesperson trying to connect with the buyer, and the buy side, because frankly, they didn't know how to get a hold of people. There weren't components in stock at the time. Everything was custom. And it was just a really long, inefficient sales process at that stage. And for them, time to market is the most critical thing, speed, because as you can imagine, if they have delays in sourcing for stacking up for just onesie twosies, they can't iterate, but you have the entire project burn happening at the same time. So long story short is, it wasn't initially, we started the first single vendor e-commerce store in med device under this private equity backed entity. And we successfully scaled that over 4.5 years and exited. And as part of that exit, two things happened. One, we knew the executive team would probably get disbanded because the new company's coming in, and that was part of it. I had a little bit of equity, so I got a payout, but not enough to retire. So it was like, all right. And then secondly, they cited that we exited exponentially to the thesis and at an exponential multiple. And the private equity guys cited this e-commerce channel as the number one thing that allowed us to build the pipeline faster, accelerate sales growth, and forecast and show that those orders over time would turn into large amounts of growth on the back end, commercial volumes. And I had this idea in my head, like we'd already proven that. And I
Mm,
had other companies coming and saying, can you come run sales and marketing and do what you did at Vention, was the company at the time. And
mm,
I'm not a patient person by nature. So I was like, I don't want to spend the next, 3 to 5 years of my career doing the same thing over again. And
yeah.
frankly, as the CEO of a contract manufacturer or a component technology company, I also don't want to learn how to be a marketing company. I want to focus on material science, technical sales, technical competency. So the idea was, hey, if we could bring this solution to everybody in our space, then it would be good for the buyers because they only have one site to go for all the companies with same UI, UX, with one payment, one checkout. And for the
Yeah.
supply side, they don't need to understand digital or e-commerce or marketing. They just use us as an extension to connect with the buyers differently. So we didn't know it was a marketplace at the time, but we're like, what if it was like an Amazon model? And so we started Googling, how do you start a business?
Yeah, yeah. That's awesome. So you kind of already have that, in the product world. We thought that you already have an MVP a little bit worked out for your previous company that had successful exit. And then you realize, hey, how do we expand this, bring it to multiple like verticals, or having really solving that supply and demand issue for the marketplace? That's pretty awesome. I think one area people don't talk very often is that being a successful entrepreneurs, there are things you have to manage.
Mm,
It could be on the radar, right? So you have three kiddos, and they are young as well. So how do you manage your household tasks with your husband? And then we talked about this. You don't have extra help. You have three kids in the Bay Area, and if I remember, your husband is also an entrepreneur. You don't have
correct.
extra help. How do you guys even run the household? I would love to learn more as well.
Well, not very gracefully at times, admittedly, but what, we don't have family or help nearby, but we have outsourced things at various stages of it. So, when the kids were little, we did have an au pair, which was a fabulous experience, really for the whole family, because we had the cultural exchange. They got a lot of attention. I was working from home, so I have the ability to sneak in and out, be there when mama needs to, if there's something, if they're upset, if the au pair needs direction, but then quickly, reinsert myself into the business as needed too. So I would say the au pair was the first thing, but also we knew that we couldn't do it all. And so we made a commitment for both of us to continue on this path to outsource stuff. So, we get help where we can and we make sacrifices in other areas. It's like, I would rather spend time with the kids than doing laundry and cleaning. And it's definitely a luxury that we've been able to pull it off, but we have made other sacrifices. Like I'm driving a mom car right now, and trust me when I say it's very much a mom car with Cheerios and milk and all the things, because it's like I would rather have somebody help with the household tasks so we have an organized environment and I can spend time with the kids than have a nice car. So you definitely have to make sacrifices. And I think one of the other things, it's interesting because you asked about the transition, and when I quit, or when we divested the company, and I had a really restrictive non-compete. So I basically had signed up to not be able to play in med device in the traditional sense for a year. So that also kind of took me down this journey. My husband was like, "Oh, you've been working really hard, stay at home with the kids." And I was like, "That's a great idea." And 2 weeks in, I was like, "This is way harder than my day job." And and I just told myself, I'm a better mom when I have something to focus on outside of the house. Otherwise, it
Yeah,
just felt like my identity got lost, honestly. And
yeah,
I
yeah.
see some of my friends who are amazing at like the DIY, like projects, and I'm just like, I just get anxiety when I think about it that way. So again, having them be able to have those experiences with somebody where that was really a natural affinity for them, and have me focus on this, just really works for everybody. And I think my husband realized that pretty quickly too. So he said, "Okay, let's do this."
That's amazing. I think having your partner's support and then understand, hey, here are things we need to outsource so we can better manage our time and energy
Yep.
to the place the kids need us the most. I think that is not very frequently discussed. It's not like all the rose petals, like a lot of things have to be taken care of.
Well,
Yeah.
especially I think as women, like only in the last couple decades have we really been trying to balance careers and raising kids. And everybody says, "Oh, you can have it all," and it's like, I don't think you really can without sacrifice, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
something has to give. And to your point, I think being really upfront about what that is and trying to find common goals. And it's not a straight path. So like we tried a few things and it was like, this is a disaster. Everything is falling apart. We need to take a step back and develop a different plan, you know? And you have to do that periodically throughout the course. I mean, the kids get older, things change there. The business, I mean, we had a thesis. It, none of us were tech founders and none of us knew digital marketing. And we're
Mhm.
just like, we're going to start a marketplace. Like that part was crazy. So
Yeah.
what we got the runway was because to your point, we sort of already had product market fit. We just needed the technical solution to move from that to marketplace. And I can only speak this clearly about it now. We didn't even know what that was or how that it existed at the time.
Mm.
And so it's taken us, you know, we founded the company 7 years ago. It's taken us a lot longer than we thought initially to get to this point. But and now, you know, we're scaling and raising money and all the things. And so it's like we made it. It was it was very difficult and took a lot longer. So if you're looking for a quick path to replace your income or grow rich, I would say entrepreneurship is not the answer for that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you 100%. I think, you know, I I think people kind of fantasize the ideas. Oh, I want to be a founder. I want to be an entrepreneur. But they don't talk about the sacrifices
Mhm.
you have to take. Like sometimes it takes, I think on average, it takes like 2 years to find product market fit. And a lot of people will just give up, right? If you
Mhm.
don't have strong family support, if people around you don't understand why are you doing this, you're putting your time and energy into this, but you could have made a lot more money in the corporate world. Like you have to have the passion and like the mission to really go down this path. It's not an easy path, right? I think it's not just like, oh, I'm a founder. It's glorious. It's not like that. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the word fantasize because I mean, even when I was thinking about starting companies before, it was more just like about creating something. But in this particular instance, it's not like I set out to be a founder. It was like, and I think it was Malcolm Gladwell's book, Outliers.
Hmm.
One of my co founders and I ended up reading at the same time when we started concepting this. And it's like, a lot of founders, especially successful ones, don't like go out seeking an idea. It's like an idea grabs them and they kind
Mm.
of become obsessed with it and can't do anything else. And at every stage of the process where I had a chance to like exit or take a job where I was making a lot more money or just quit because it was so hard, I said to my husband, I'm like, I don't know why, but every single day when I wake up, like I'm obsessed with this. This is the only thing I can think about. It's like
Mm.
if money was no object, I wouldn't even entertain doing anything else. But clearly then you have to balance that with, okay, we've got 3 kids. They're getting to the age where, you know, we might need to make a different choice about middle school and they've got sports and all that. So it's a constant evolution. And I always say it's not for the faint at heart. And up to this point, when anybody asks me, I say, don't do it because it was people told me actually like how overwhelming it would be, but it was exponential to that. Like, I can't even
Yeah.
explain at points along the way where I was just like, "Am I still physically here? What's happening?" I'm just, like, on autopilot trying to make it work, you know?
Yeah.
So
That kind of
support system is huge, yeah.
Yeah, that segue to our next questions. That what are some of the biggest challenge you're facing right now at work or at life? Right. I think we talked about in the current company in Chamber, at least you had an initial product market fit. So
Right.
that sounds like you are going off to a great start compared to maybe other founders. It takes them years to find that initial customer to say test out ideas. So maybe
Yep.
that's not the biggest challenge right now. But what are some other challenges you're facing? Or maybe with families that with going down the entrepreneurial path, what are some things that you find, hey, it's a little bit hard to balance?
Yeah. Well, I think my just I'll address family first because, you know, that's where I try and train my brain to go. Um you know, the kids are getting older and we've sort of found a balance and a cadence. And I think it was harder, to be honest, when the kids were younger because my husband didn't relate to them in the same way. But now he's actually getting more involved and he's okay taking the lead on things because they're older and he can relate to them differently. And I think that's fairly typical. So, really, in the last year, that him getting engaged has stepped up immensely and them being independent and they've started to say, "Mom, what you're doing is so cool. Oh, I want to do," like, instead of it being like me feeling guilty about
Yeah.
spending so much time working, they're saying like, what were your, you know, what milestones did you hit today?
They're
What
already excited for you.
they're so
Nice.
excited for
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
proud of you. This is amazing. And then they're like, what if I started a business? And so I think really I feel a lot of pride in being able to show them that example and also share some of the challenges with them. Like, hey, this isn't guaranteed and I'm taking
Yeah.
risks. And, we have to be smart and make choices on our spend. And here's why I'm doing it. And failure is okay too. Like if it doesn't work out, I can get another job and we're going to be just fine. And talking through that sort of emotional journey you go on with them is really powerful, to be honest with you. Um, when we talk about the work challenges, I mean, there's just so many. I think what the challenges in the earlier days, we were bootstrapped. Like I mentioned, we did not have a technical founder. We built the tech stack because although we had an MVP in terms of product market fit, we didn't have an MVP in terms of a marketplace solution. And so we basically, colluged together this beta site just to test the idea. And then once we started to get scale, we didn't really know how to move away from that or think, we couldn't think bigger picture because we didn't have the funding and the cash.
Mhm.
And so
Yeah.
it wasn't until, so for the last, the first 6 years, we literally just bootstrapped it and sacrificed paying ourselves. We never took a dollar from the business for 4 years. And even now we're all paying ourselves, like a quarter of our market rates and investing in resources and system upgrades to really get that flywheel effect that you can get with marketplaces. And so
Yeah.
we've had to have regular meetings with our spouses and us as founders and just say, is this still working for us? And like,
Right.
how much further do we want to go, and make those decisions and talk about, go back and figure out how it affects your choices privately in your personal life. And then if we can all come together and find a path forward. And luckily for the three of us we have, which is one of the other things I would say was critical in this case, is I have two co-founders. And there is,
Mm.
I know some people who start alone, and my advice would be go find your yin or your yang, or like the other part of your brain, or
Yeah.
where where your areas of opportunity are, and really allow somebody to come on the journey with you, because it's not just about bandwidth. It's also about like emotional support,
Yeah. Yeah.
rallying when things get hard. If one of us was really like, what are we doing? We're down. The other ones would be like, we got this, totally cheer us on. So there's a synergy that happens when you've got more than one person in the founding team, and you can sort of balance each other out and support each other out.
How did you find the other two co-founders? So you've been working with them for years?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Got
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we all worked together for several years before, and in fact, my one co-founder, who's branding and communications, 20 years in med device, we had worked together at a prior company. I brought her to the one where we did the single vendor e-commerce store. And
Mm.
then when we were starting to build that, I was like, we need somebody that can technically dial in on specifically what products would sell for engineers, how they're thinking about constructing a device in, different end markets or product applications, and then which component sizes would all fit into that. And so I recruited Katie out of the engineering group. And I remember when I first said to her, you should come be in product marketing and help us launch the e-commerce store. She was like, hard no. I'm an engineer. I want nothing to do with marketing and sales.
Right. Yeah.
And not only did I effectively bring her over, we exited that company successfully. And then she came and was like, I love this. We need to do the next thing together. And so we were all kind of hooked on, the success that we had, and also just bringing an innovative, unique solution to market. And it just
Yeah.
sort of happened by, again, what I really would give credit to the private equity group, because they said, we trust you guys. You're closer to us. We'll give you money. You come up with something and work your way
Mhm.
through it. And they were very supportive. Now, of course,
That's
we did the
amazing.
first one with their cash and then the second one with our own. And so it was a very different experience.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. I agree. I think I've looked at like successful companies, right? I think co-founder breakup
Mm,
is something they don't have, right? You have to make sure you have the partner in crime together, that you know each other's strengths and weaknesses, give honest feedback. But if the co-founders don't get along, then the company is it's like doomed to fail, right? In your case, you work with them, you know each other, the best. So that will really help you to transition to a very successful partnership. Yeah.
yeah, but it is like a marriage, because, again, when you're operating really well under somebody else's, purse strings,
Hmm.
and you're not entirely responsible for the success or the failure and every dollar that comes in and out. It's easier to get along when you
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
into the trenches, just like a marriage. It's like, oh, the dating phase is great, but then when you've got a mortgage and you've got
Right.
kids, you have to make decisions about where to spend and how. And I mean, we had some really tough moments. And I think, you're causing me to reflect. And one thing that I'm really proud of is we've worked through it and we've stuck together.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it hasn't always been easy. And I think the way you get through it is you just find those little pieces of success and realignment and set new goals and, take the time to just say, oh, I sucked yesterday and I'm sorry about that. I'm coming back with fresh start. Let's do this. So you got to be
Yeah,
humble.
definitely. The last question I have for you, I think you kind of touched along a little bit earlier, is that do you have any advice for busy parents who
Mm.
might want to try out entrepreneurship? Maybe they're not sure. Maybe they've seen other people do it. Maybe they're still deciding. What kind of framework do you have? Like, do you write down all the pros and cons, and what kind of things that help you to make the decision? Or maybe, as you said, don't do it to a lot of people, right? Not everybody should choose this path.
I mean, I have said that for the last 6 years, but I think the reality is whatever you think, however long you think it's going to take you to be successful and how much you think money you're going to need, multiply that by 10, because the reality is different things come up that you can't anticipate in your personal life, and that affects your ability to focus on the business. Like COVID hit when we did the business, and it was like, in a way, it ended up being a benefit for us, but initially it was just like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get through this, right? We've had car accidents and a surprise. I had 2 kids and I was like on my path to that's it, and then surprise third kid, and it's like, oh, guess we're just going to throw another kid in the mix. And my co-founders are like, what? We thought you were past that point. So just get really clear about how can you get aligned with your partner if you have one, and
Mhm.
assume that your runway is going to be indefinite. So whatever you agree to um, you know put as both the financial commitment, the time commitment, assume you're going to get into it and everything is going to take longer. And I think if you have that mindset from the beginning, it'll
Mm.
allow you to be patient. But it's automatically going to focus you, because nobody wants to work for free forever and nobody
Yeah.
wants to, go down with the ship. So I think that sort of motivation comes naturally, but you have to be in the right mental space, because if money was the only reason we were doing this, we'd have quit a long time ago, right? It
Yeah.
really needs to be something that you can't wake up and move up forward with your life without, if you're going to commit to it.
Yeah. I think, as you said, you have to know that it's going to be a long-term commitment, financially, mentally, even physically ready, right? There's just a
Exactly.
lot of sweat and tears, right? There are
Yep.
things that you don't account for initially. They're just like, life is full of surprises. So it's entrepreneurship, right? So I think if a person is decided to go down this path, just be ready. You might not get paid for the next like 4 or 5 years, or even 10 years, the worst case, or maybe 20 years. But they have to really truly love what they do,
Exactly.
and
Yeah,
then
that's
have
a
the
great point,
financial
to
support.
love it,
Yeah,
because if you don't, it's not gonna you're not gonna sustain the journey, if that makes sense.
right. Yeah, definitely. And I think I've seen a LinkedIn post recently about somebody that's been doing entrepreneurship, and then they realize, hey, like I need to have a real corporate job to be financially stable. I think that's a good lesson as well. Like a coin has two sides, right? If
Yeah.
you go down the risky path, and like maybe not everybody is gonna be like the billionaire going to the IPO. There are people who realize, oh, I learned a ton, and then time to go back to the corporate world because I want to, start a family, buy a house, and that kind of things. Yeah.
I think that's a really good point. And like I said, the co-founders, we've had to come back together, and it hasn't been the same journey for each of us individually, even if we're collectively still here. And so we've had to say, like, hey, is this where you still want to be? Because
Mhm.
maybe it wouldn't be the 3 of us forever. Maybe one person is just like, I've had enough, and based on my life challenges, this is where I want to
Yeah.
go. And there's always a path once you get there. I mean, you need that stickiness factor in the beginning, but kind of like the way I tell the team right now is what got us here isn't going to get us there. So
Yes.
talked
Yeah.
about challenges. The challenges we've got today are very different than they were, 5 years ago. And now we're looking to really own that we've built a tech company, even though we thought we were building a med device company or
Yeah.
medical components company, right? And that requires different skill sets, different vision, different, technical astuteness and investment. And maybe we as founders coming up in med device, we're the perfect people to get the MVP launch, but we aren't the
Mhm.
perfect people to really scale this in a way that, B2B is digitizing in other industries, like I said.
Yeah, definitely.
So
Thank
I'm
you
like,
so
if
much.
if they, some of my investors ask me like, do you want to be the CEO? And they love for me to say yes, and I would, die on the sword. But the reality is my answer is always like, if there's a better person that has a vision, I will. I just want what we've built. I know that it will help engineers innovate, that it will streamline the process, make it more efficiently. My passion is bringing this vision to life, and if somebody else can do that smarter, better, as long as I can be part of it, I would.
Right. Yeah, I love that. I think a lot of people are.
Tied to a role. I'm
Yeah.
tied to this vision, being realized.
Yeah, I think that's definitely kind of you're looking at the bigger picture, right?
Mm,
I've seen founders, they're very clean to the company they started. Sometimes, they're not the best fit. Sometimes they are the best fit.
right.
But for you, that this is your passion, you are best doing it now. And then if there's somebody better, you want to like help the company succeed. Doesn't always have to be about like yourself or something. Yeah, that's amazing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Thank you so much for your time, Julie.